When an $800,000 project fails because the supervisor dismissed an arrogant employee, do you know who I am? First of all, I wasn't the irreplaceable employee. I was with the individual when they got the call on this matter, and he gave me a detailed explanation. Since he is not on Reddit, I am publishing it since it is priceless. Modified to safeguard individual and corporate identities in buildings that are significant to the narrative in the United Kingdom. In order to save historic and significant structures, a building is classified as a listed building under the regulations governing its preservation. Established, maintained, and enhanced SL are quite rigorous. I must be ambiguous about the effort required, or it will be too simple to determine the parties. My buddy David is an expert in a particularly specific field of building. He fixes and remodels all of his work, focuses on structures constructed, using a very antiquated technique that hasn't been used for generations. On a Grade 1 listed property, conservation projects and listed building work were necessary. The structure as a whole, one aspect of the job was quite specialized, and it was completed by the principal contractor, ACC Limited. The architect provided the managers with a list of eligible individuals who were selected by the contractors since the managers didn't know anybody who did it. The owner of ACC Limited the primary contractor since my buddy was the first person available 5 days into the project. When the business got there, he was being a loud jerk and flinging his weight about. David said that he instructed one of his carpenters to fetch him coffee while he was working and ignored him. Minutes after he vanished, the loud jerk kept walking and complaining about delays that cost him a lot. My pal was questioned by the loud gobshite. Where is that? After the carpenter vanished. Having a chippy with my coffee is like Carpenter David being loud. Pointing to the walls. Gobshite. Go find out, David. I'm just here for this job. I don't know whether you're an employee or a subcontractor, and I don't work for ACC Limited. You still work for me, David, so go get me some coffee first. I like being spoken to in that way. And secondly, I have a contract with you that says I'm only supposed to do these walls. Not a gopher, loud jerk, huh? You don't enjoy being spoken to like that, do you? What subcontractor do you work for? You don't work for David. I work for myself. So it's just me being loud. You have the audacity to speak to a day worker like that. Do you know who I am, David? Yes, David. You're fired for being a loud jerk. Please leave the site immediately. David took out his phone and said, "Just leave the site, it's really noisy," and began filming David. "All right, I'll leave. I just need confirmation that you instructed me to do so." David was holding the phone when the loud gobshite snatched it and yelled into it, saying, "Get off the site, noisy gobshite. You fool, you're fired. If you're still here, Ian, I'll have you ejected in 10 minutes. No issue." He gathered up all of his children and left, but not before the contractor's site manager went by him. Ironically, while smiling and offering the boss coffee, Tim added, "Site manager, you're leaving early. Dave bloody part." "I'm kidding, David. Your employer just let me go and our contract is up. I'm sorry, buddy site. Manager, please wait while I take care of things." David left the site manager was losing his since he discovered that just 7 persons in the UK are loud gobshite. There is a waiting list for skilled workers, and by the time he got home, David was the last one left, received 12 missed calls on Thursday, which was 2 working days ago. He said, he will return, but only after receiving payment for the additional days and receiving a sincere apology from the supervisor I saw in person. David also informed me when his buddy received a call from the site manager stating that the boss apologized but was unable to do so in person since he was out of the country. He called the other experts to warn them, but they had all been contacted on Friday to do the task, and no one accepted. They were all booked full. Additionally, David called the architect to alert him to the fact that some dishonest contractors attempt to bodge in cases like these. David is certain that he will stick to his guns and pay for all missed days in addition to offering an in-person apology. I've said that I would pay anything to see the face-to-face apologies update on one website. The manager called to inform him that a loud jerk had threatened to take legal action against David if he didn't complete the work site. David reminded the manager who was quite embarrassed and regretful that he had documentation proving his termination and that he had not left. David refused to start tomorrow when the site manager called again to say that the loud gobshite will apologize face-to-face on Friday. "Manager, please wait while I take care of things." David left The site manager was losing his since he discovered that just 7 persons in the UK are loud gobshite. There is a waiting list for skilled workers, and by the time he got home, David was the last one left. Received 12 missed calls on Thursday, which was 2 working days ago, he said. He will return, but only after receiving payment for the additional days and receiving a sincere apology from the supervisor I saw in person. David also informed me when his buddy received a call from the site manager stating that the boss apologized, but was unable to do so in person since he was out of the country. He called the other experts to warn them, but they had all been contacted on Friday to do the task, and no one accepted. They were all booked full. Additionally, David called the architect to alert him to the fact that some dishonest contractors attempt to bodge in cases like these. David is certain that he will stick to his guns and pay for all missed days in addition to offering an in-person apology. I've said that I would pay anything to see the face-to-face apologies update on one website. The manager called to inform him that a loud jerk had threatened to take legal action against David if he didn't complete the worksite. David reminded the manager, who was quite embarrassed and regretful, that he had documentation proving his termination and that he had not left. David refused to start tomorrow when the site manager called again to say that the loud gobshite will apologize face-to-face on Friday. The terms are different after a face-to-face apology and the fear of legal action. When work resumes, 2 days' worth of overtime compensation and 3 full contract worth up front before work begins, and everything has to be finished by Thursday, at the latest, which is the final day he may begin. I questioned him about why he still expects to complete before his next booking, since he works the weekends as well. "Isn't charging a lot more for the person being such a jerk?" He remarked that taking advantage of someone doesn't seem good. Many businesses, when they're pressed for time, it seems that one of my pals is an 18th grader. When David remarked, "Only 7 others do this work," I misinterpreted him to imply 7 other people. Since the companies other than his are tiny, he estimates that there are still approximately 20 individuals who can do it. I apologize for fooling you all about the number update too, but it's not as absurdly little as 7. David found out that the site manager was held accountable for not making noise, so it seems there won't be any apologies. David called ACC Limited's operations director after being sacked, despite being fully aware of the circumstances beforehand. Loud gobshites number 2, and told them that because he won't be going back, they don't need to apologize anymore. David informed him that the operations director offered to generously renegotiate the money and apologized for everything. Said he had only thought of returning to work as a courtesy to the former site manager since he isn't. I asked him why he felt no need to return, and the operations director said that he would get back to David. Didn't threaten to resign or give him his job back, David remarked. Noisy gobshite is too weak and petty to be. If I advise a craftsman what to do, it must be the company's concept for the site manager to return. David claims that while the site manager is excellent at his work, it won't be possible to get him back since he is just 4 years away. Retirement, thus finding a job at age 61, is difficult. I've determined that I like David even more now than I did 3 days ago. Update 3:02 a.m. We just returned from the bar, and David, the site manager, received a call while we were gone. This afternoon, the architect called the Satch site manager to inform him of the latest developments. Just before 9 p.m. David received a call from the Satch site manager, who was looking for a site manager for a firm. I had to endure. When I just heard one half of the phone conversation, I must have seemed naively thrilled, as if I had received a bunch of sparrows, before David. After I filled him in, the site manager called to express gratitude and ask what his favorite beverage is so he could give him a bottle. Is seeing them on Friday, even though he hasn't received the new position yet. It seems that the architect's advice has considerable weight, so Hoon is hopeful. At first, David replied, I didn't get you a job. but the site manager answered, "The architect did. However, you started it all by telling the architect that I was dismissed due of you and would never have to deal with—" David didn't specify who the annoying person was, so we'll have to make a guess. "That annoying person ever again," David stated. He said that he would only take a bottle of his drink, Cardo Gold Reserve, if the site manager was hired for a new position. The site manager will visit and drink with David. It seems that the attractive writer completed the really hard and time-consuming task. David eloquently said that the act of deftly recording this saga on Reddit is not part of the whiskey ingestion. The good news is that you may purchase your own drink, but the bad news is that no one will be able to see the I was eagerly awaiting that further information. Tosspot noisy gobshite. Eat. When he needs to apologize outside of work, David and the dismissed site manager are acquainted. They are both involved with charitable groups in the David is in Round Table, and the site manager is in Rotary Club, yet they both work together a lot in the same town. Even if I don't believe he's a knight, the operations director of ACC Limited may call David and propose that David claims they've missed the boat and that there is no way to get the site manager back and kindly renegotiate the money. There are at least 11 days of work remaining, so he can complete it alone before beginning his next job. If everything goes according to plan, David has only 10 days left until his new job begins on November 4th, if he works both. The question that many people ask is, I wish I could be a fly on the wall when noisy gobshite is told. Weekends are too late. If I told you what David did, it would be so identifying that I may as well tell you his true name and his I apologize. But the reason there aren't many of them is because it takes 5 years to become proficient, and at least 9. Update 4. Terrible news. In order to be a master craftsman, you must have at least one master present when the task is finished. The dismissed site manager met with a new firm but was not hired for the reasons given. Things unclear, but David is meeting with him on Sunday to talk about it, and I can sense how David feels about it despite the site manager claims he will take action for wrongful dismissal, although it's not his fault. I had assumed that win-win-win. However, I assume life isn't like that. News regarding the dismissed site manager, the situation isn't as terrible as Initially, I believe we misinterpreted what transpired on Friday. David spoke with him yesterday about the business he saw on. Although the part about Friday not hiring him normally was accurate, they have given him an 18-month fixed-term contract on a distribution basis. Center build isn't flawless, but at least it pays a little more than ACC for the short 18-month period. Better than nothing. And if another project comes along, there's a possibility the new business may prolong the contract. David informed me with a smile that he had heard that a Bulgarian would be coming over to do the task. Believes he knows what's going to happen since several 19th century structures in Sora were constructed using a similar but distinct approach. David believes that the David has chosen to wait because the man will employ that procedure, which seems identical, but 2 crucial ingredients are different. He planned to let the Bulgarian complete the project and be paid. Then David is going to recommend to the planning department and the customer that they verify the 2 components. The Bulgarian will have employed the incorrect materials unless he is familiar with the English procedure from the 17th century. They are quite severe with this kind of job, so I shouldn't want to do it. Therefore, I'm going to tear it out and start again. But I really hope this occurs. I'm a petty guy, and many people want to know more details. When will David find out whether the Bulgarian has performed well? If the Bulgarian gets in touch with one of the material's few sources, David could find out quite quickly. They chat like old ladies correcting us, and David will be informed what David has said. It's a little incestuous aspect of the business. David will leave things alone until he is informed that the job is completed and that everyone is gossiping like old ladies. According to David, I don't want the Bulgarian to drag since he is paid and doesn't want to jeopardize the man's money. Only because I can't wait to dump stupid bollocks in the guy's ARS over here and go home empty-handed. The man has a job to earn, so I'll wait. Just to clear things up, the Bulgarian should take around 3 weeks. Silly Bolok is the same guy as Noisy Gobshite. Unless he works on the weekends, David knows a lot of individuals on the job site, and a few at ACC headquarters. Thus, I have to sit on my hands for 3 to 4 weeks and act like I'm not an employee because he will know when the task is done. Update 5. A 7-year-old girl is giddy with anticipation over Christmas. David has been informed that the Bulgarian began working right once and had supplies supplied, although they came from a regular building source. It is too heavy for him to carry with him, even if they sell it in Bulgaria and he hasn't purchased it from the UK source. There are 3, but only one has enough for this task, since they got it in for David. Ferry is not utilizing the proper materials, and even if he weren't irritated, David wouldn't let it go undetected. Regarding loud gobshite, he is a purist who really cares about maintaining all the structures he works on. David adds that if he's using greater historical accuracy, I'll have to retain my water for 3 to 4 weeks. If you remain in the 17th century, it takes 3 weeks, but he may complete sooner using contemporary materials. I've become a little strange about this work. When I called David earlier under false pretenses, he recognized that I was requesting information once again. David, if it's not too much bother, would you want me to install a body camera so you can see and hear everything as it happens? And you may include me in your phone conversations, which would be great, David. After I chuckle, you knob cheese. Is it okay if I don't hide the lens while I'm shaming my wife? I don't do those 2 things simultaneously, but, David, whatever suits you, you're telling me that you do them separately. When will you be snagging my wife and me immediately after? She has removed all the sheets off you because some of us are picky, David. You're a stiff ass. English manners aren't what they used to be, even if it doesn't seem like it. Clean freak hangs up, says goodbye, and sees you soon. Enjoy it. But to be honest, I do have a life. I swear, when I began writing this, I never would have thought. The Bulgarian completed the work and left for home, so I'm going to write update 6 with loads of news. According to those who met him 2 weeks ago, Stefan the Bulgarian was a kind man who worked very hard. According to what he discovered about Stefan David, he might reduce the expense of remaining in the UK by working 12-hour days and weekends. David was glad he waited until Stefan was paid before reporting the task, since he was quite certain that Stefan was. He had examined the 3 companies, who are the only UK providers of the most specialized material needed for the project. But none of them were doing it right. Said that they had an order for the website. Stefan may have imported it, of course, but no one on the site had noticed. As anticipated, David contacted the local authority planning department, the customer, and the foreign material order. Architect and a group known as Historic England, he provided the simplest and least invasive explanation of his concerns. Method of testing, after which he waited for them to investigate. This took just a few days, but I can really state that I've never been more nervous or involved in something that has nothing to do with my own company, as the initial news came from. The architect used a Bulgarian methodology from the 19th century, however, he utilized the incorrect materials and the improper manner, not the English of the 17th century that is required. And the architect was furious. David Avid said I had previously heard the architect use foul language, but this phone conversation was blue, and apparently loud gobshite is what it is called. I had no notion what a wumble was, until the architect David questioned me in an uneducated cockwomble. Greetings, the architect said that he would speak with the local government, since he did not want people to believe that this is anything to do with him. The most of the others came to David's second or third hand. I asked him if he knew any ACC employees. He said that the local authority couldn't answer the phone quickly enough if he had trouble getting them to tell him anything. After inspecting the construction, the planning officials informed the contractor that it was completely incorrect and needed to be removed. So then things became interesting. The inspectors looked about the premises and discovered, I can't say exactly what, a problem. About this, since it would be too simple to determine which buildings are implicated, and the contractor has partially demolished There was an interior element in the building that didn't seem to be very significant, but as part of the roof structure, they replaced it with far more modern assistance. However, they are not permitted to speak with the project manager or guess who ordered it to be replaced with a fast and inexpensive solution, because the new site manager or staff understood how important it was. Fix the slow, costly option, but it was obviously loud and a criminal. Even if they are not imprisoned, it is a serious felony to damage anything on this kind of property. Okay, so now that company's employees are blaming one another and denying any culpability, the customer instructed all contractor employees to leave the site on Tuesday the 19th so that everything could be inspected. It's quite likely that they will fire the contractor, and they've instructed other contractors to submit bids. Additionally, bring legal action against the contractor for the $800,000 cost of fixing and replacing what they did incorrectly. The contractor was notified in writing by the authority planning department of their mistakes, their preparations for inspection, and the potential for the staff claims that the prosecution's boisterous gobshite vanished from the attorney's office on the day the letter was delivered. David had, after word of the letter spread among the workers, he received 3 phone calls from ACC in less than an hour. We are now awaiting a few things, including the client's inspection, assuming that is confirmed. The customer has the authority to terminate the contractor if ACC causes damage to the site. ACC is not compensated, and they having a thorough bill. 2. Local authority inspection conducted by conservation specialists to see if they have damaged any features in the local authority will pursue ACC as a business for the property, and David, the person who issued the order, is extremely displeased because, in his opinion, the internal structure that has been damaged cannot be restored, since it has been operating for 400. He is very depressed, and I'm willing to wager that he is rather loud. Years pass before that gist stain appears, and then it disappears forever. That day last month, Gobshite wishes he had his own coffee. They edited the letter to ACC to include their own name instead, not threaten legal action, but just informed them that the planning department would be sending an expert to examine the construction, specifically the change-affected region. It seems that prosecution, if it occurs, takes forever. I sincerely apologize for deceiving you all, just like everyone else, because I was too eager to grab my pitchfork and assume the worst. Because of Chinese whispers and wishful thinking, the story was considerably more serious and sophisticated by the time it reached David. Noisy Gobshite might actually be charged, but the second correction is that it's more likely to be 6 months rather than 6 days. I started by promising to try to be a little more careful with updates going forward. This was my fault, not David's. You're too eager to feed the masses, and they might think you're farting, so everything that goes in your ears doesn't have to come out of your mouth. Rainbows at the moment, but if you make a big deal out of the information, it won't last. He's acting normally as usual. Some people have asked what happened to the original site manager, which is an irksomely common request for information, who was fired, but I was unable to respond until tonight, when David, the site manager, and 2 other people met at a pub. He will undoubtedly pass the fidelity insurance checks for his new job, which he will begin on February 9th. Paid off in leave of notice by ACC, which is standard procedure for terminating his contract. He was given 3 months' notice, owed 12 holiday SL vacation days, so they gave him a lump sum payment of just over 3. 5 months' salary. He also keeps the car until March. Claimed that I was trembling uncontrollably when he fired me, but my wife reminded me that I could get my pension early and how much I despise that business, and that shady Palick in particular. Before the architect contacted me with I stopped worrying about his distribution center job, because he has taken time off and is beginning the new position a little more pay. But the main drawback is that the position is only guaranteed for 18 months, so there's a good chance that the corporation would retain him beyond that. If they have job, it's simply not clear. Originally, he was planned to take Loud Gobshite to an industrial tribunal for wrongful dismissal. Now he can't, since he isn't going to suffer financially. He said, obviously, I'm glad I'm not losing money, but I was looking forward to beating that Watso in court right now. He is using the extra time to build a better sleigh and some reindeer. Yep, a sleigh. It's to go on the back of a truck. His group walk around the area dressed as elves and snowmen with Father Christmas on, the sleigh playing Christmas carols at window-rattling volume, collecting donations for a charity. I've been roped into it many times. He brought David the whiskey he promised. David said he shouldn't, but site manager remarked Yorkshire men follow. Their word even to a shower of soft, shandy-drinking Southerners like Ulan furthermore. I'm not chance-breaking this fortunate streak, although the whiskey was half price. Both me and David pointed at him simultaneously and shouted a true Yorkshirean, for the ignorant Yorkshire people have a reputation for two things extremely: weep and bith. That's why you've probably seen some awful language I'm waffling now. Since I'm full of whiskey, it's 1 a.m. Yeah, it's beyond my bedtime by for now. Update 7. I suppose there may be some karmic justice on its way. Loud gobshite has been interrogated under caution. It doesn't mean they're unquestionably pursuing legal action against him, but it also indicates that they are being ready for the potential that they did the same with the project manager, and the site manager who was sacked will do it with them the following week. Sure, he has nothing to worry about. The decision to remove the roof. Support portions was taken after he was dismissed. He stated he was convinced that if he'd been present at the time of the unlawful change, the noisy Goesh would have sought to transfer culpability or a site. According to the management, a cowardly slop-shouldered turd would have sprayed me in order to protect his own skin. Fortunately, the project manager has documentation in the form of an email proving that loud gobshite attempted to request the job. Convince SBBE not to share it with the local authority planning department's investigators when he attempted to scare him, but it didn't work, since the project manager not only disregarded the threats, but I have a lawyer acquaintance who informs me that he told the investigators that a loud idiot instructed him to delete the email. Destroying evidence and tampering with a witness are crimes in and of themselves, and this loud jerk will not stop digging himself a bigger hole. I'm going to be so upset if he escapes legal action. He is undoubtedly going through a difficult time as a result of the major news. David made the announcement yesterday Saturday that the noisy gobshite of the week had been fired after being informed by no less. He said that 4 different ACC employees couldn't wait to tell him, and the exchange proceeded as follows. Is it possible that the owner was fired? Did he approach a mirror and claim that you were just as useless as Anne? Yes, David. You are fired from Frank's drum kit. He inherited the company from his father and uncle. Yes, David. His brother and cousin individually own a portion, as does their combined share, is more than 50%. Therefore, they dismissed him, according to Louise, the accounts manager. As long as the money was coming in, they were content to keep the loud jerk in control. But now their golden goose appearance makes them seem very ill. They are pleading with the client's SLP owner to cancel this contract because they are afraid that the penalties and fines would cause the firm to fail. Bring ACC back to complete the deal, which includes persuading the building owner that loud garbage will never have anything to do with the business. Clearly, they're blatantly disregarding Louise's assertion that when they dismissed him, he had to be taken from the property because he was yelling and making violent threats from a loud idiot. He has been calling staff members to ask inquiries, and Louise claims that he is shocked when they refuse to assist him. She said that the guy is in cloud cuckoo land, and that the staff members like him and want to stay with him. I'm furious. I wish I could have seen Thatnam's face when it was occurring, David. The scrot doesn't deserve it. I promised the person who informed me that I wouldn't tell anybody yet. Therefore, I can't tell you about it. Me, you tease, how essential is it? David, it's tremendous life-changing for the topic. I wish I could tell you because it almost caused me a hard on me. Fing hell, it must be massive. If it can get that ugly appendage to do anything but dangle there like the last chicken in the supermarket. Your wife must have been thrilled. David. What a drama. She thinks I should tell her this item I was told in. Confidentially, she feels I should be allowed to tell her anything since we're married. I explained it's not my secret to share. I was hoping I'd get. I appreciate you have integrity, dear husband. But no, I've got an angry Mrs. who thinks I'm a knobhead Louise, and her job title have been changed to protect the innocent. It seems like it will be a few months before he can share this fantastic news with me. Therefore, I don't want any of you to wait for the client. The building owner has inspected the property and 2 areas the damaged portion and the section that David should have done, but Stefan did it instead. They are quite upset when local structures that are listed suffer damage. Authority often believes the owner is taking shortcuts, but in this instance, the owner is a historic organization committed to maintaining significant. They disliked having to demonstrate that they had nothing to do with the damage to the structures, since they're not used to being accused of anything unethical. Building David said it appears like they've written off ACC, since they've released a form of call for proposals to a number of other conservation-focused, revealed a great deal of technical terms that I didn't understand. Or, recalling me in plain English, they have requested quotes from many businesses for the work, David, which is a highly, I don't have the time or the crayons to explain it to you, in a straightforward manner, so let's say I was anticipating that this narrative would reach a crescendo with their arrogant request for the job's costs. While we wait to see what legal action will be taken, the loud gobshite who is suffering from something terrible has kind of whimpered out. Hello, this is Mark's wife. January 21st, 2020. Real life is really sluggish. He was injured in a vehicle accident on January 7th, we're certain, and the moron requested me to apologize to the internet for his quiet. He will fully recover, but he won't be on the internet for some time. I mentioned that it's only Reddit, but he's a compulsive. I'm crazy about keeping people happy, so I promised to add Reddit to the list, and now I'm informing everyone that he doesn't know why he hasn't completed telling them anything they're probably not reading anyhow. March 2 in 2020. Hello, Mark's wife again. There were over 200 direct messages. Thank you everyone for your remarks and for wishing him well. I've read them all to him. I'm going to explain the 3 most popular questions. 1. What happened to Mark? He was stationary in his automobile and a queue to exit the highway when a big lorry struck him from behind, crushing his vehicle between it and the lorry in front of Mark. He has many bones fractured in the nose, left orbital, cheekbone, left radius, ulna, forearm, left hand, right tibia and fibula, lower leg, and 4 ribs, one of which pierced his left lung. His center vision is also somewhat damaged. He has some damage to the tendons in his right hand, which requires a lot of more surgery, and his left eye, which we hope is transitory. He seems to be a mess due to the 112 stitches and incisions, but there is a potential that he may heal without any long-term damage. I couldn't handle it if it were me, but during the time I've known him, he's always been as resilient as nails. Arrived at the hospital, where he lay covered in tubes, wires, and blood, unable to speak. I went to pieces, and he made me laugh inside. He has always been adept at knowing what to say, but at the moment, the thing that is most upsetting him is it might take some time for him to update the story because he is unable to use his hands. I could ask his friend, called David, to get an update, but I'm biased, and I can't tell a story the way Mark can. When Mark and David start talking, I laugh so hard that I'm having trouble breathing. Mark is the funniest man I've ever met. Instructed him to put everything aside apart than getting well. But if it begins to get to him, I'll perform some role-playing as a secretary, and he can dictate. The story to me, I know he will finish it. He always finishes what he starts. I wish I had a tenth of his self-discipline. 3, some people have asked if they can give him presents, cards, or cash to help with lost wages or medical expenses. Thank you so much for offering. But since we're in the UK and healthcare is free, it's not required, so he doesn't want anyone's funds. If someone feels compelled to take action, we have long supported a charity called Macmillan Cancer Support. Final update. Do you know who I am? Backfires on business owner. The David versus Noisy Gobshite story. May 22nd, 2020. This username, Slow, mostly gruntled, belonged to my husband, Mark, had been updating the story he wrote about his friend David and a business owner he called a noisy gobshite. The narrative until January, when he was in a vehicle accident, and requested me to inform everyone that he was hurt, and after he healed, he would update the narrative. Sadly, Mark died suddenly a little more than a week after my previous remark, leaving everyone devastated. Believed he was getting better, but all of a sudden he passed out and the staff made every effort to. They did everything they could to save him, but he had a ruptured A, which they said was likely caused by the accident, and is common. In car crashes. I'm sorry I didn't update this sooner, but to be honest, I completely forgot about this website. It only realized how many people were waiting for Mark to finish the story when I returned to read his words once more. I'm not sure how many people will view this update, but if you know someone who was anticipating Mark's response, could you kindly let them know? Thank you. I apologize for ignoring you all for so long, and I thank the hundreds of people who left get well messages for Mark. Long, but I've been dazed for the past 3 months. Mark would most certainly have disapproved of my putting everyone in limbo, and would have scolded me off several thanks to the persons who made contributions to Macmillan. Cancer support. However, it feels weird to see money paid in the name of primarily Gruntled. Eventually, thank you to the explaining how I could notify everyone. May 24th, 2020. I can't thank you all enough for the nice remarks and virtual hugs that I have seen over the past day. It's difficult to describe how wonderful it is to cry when someone you love passes away. I have cried for hours. One will most likely comprehend because of your posts and messages, as the majority of today has been heartwarming. Made me reflect on all of Mark's amazing traits and the reasons I adored him so much that I began writing the update, but stopped. About I'm so happy I did it after trying 8 times before finding the courage. Once again, I want to thank the moderator, Marario1, for the last little push I needed. It's also made me realize that I want to do one more thing that Mark would have wanted. He always finished what he started. I'm going to speak to his friends and find out what has happened. I know some of it already, but I'll try to get myself up to date with everyone's outcomes. I warn you in advance, it will not be like Mark's writing. It will just be the facts. I haven't got an ounce of Mark's flair for telling a story, but it's obvious from the comments that a lot of people were waiting for a conclusion. The plain facts will have to. I'm going to talk to David, who has been a huge support system for me. So please, pardon me. I'm hoping that he will be able to tell me everything this year. I'll post the update as soon as I can. Thank you very much, everyone. You have no idea how much this has helped 25.5 SL202 yesterday. Is having a better day, mainly because of what you all wrote today. I woke up angry and I can't shake it. Today is a public holiday in England, and I keep thinking about what we would be doing if Mark was here. He never wasted a holiday. I'm angry because I have lost the best person I have ever known in my life, just because some selfish idiot couldn't wait to reply to a text message. I can't get over the stupidity and the unfairness. He will go to prison, but only for a few years. But nothing will bring my Mark back. Sorry, people. I just needed to vent. Please, please, please don't use your phone when you're driving, and don't talk tolerated if you see others doing it. March 6, 2020. I would like to mention 2 things. Firstly, may I thank everyone who has made a comment. The beautiful things you have all said about Mark have lifted my spirits. I didn't imagine they would, which is why it took so long to inform you that Mark had passed away. But you did help, even when what you said was so touching that I broke down, which I have done dozens of times reading the wonderful words. Secondly, may I apologize for not yet responding to every comment. On some days I feel I could talk about Mark all day. On others, I can't even think about him without going to, if I haven't responded to your individual comment. It's not that I haven't read it. I've read all of them. It's just that I have been in a bad place some of the time, and I can't reply. I will eventually reply to everyone, just as I did very slowly with the cards at the time of his funeral, and since I didn't think I would get through them all, it seemed that I was climbing a mountain that wouldn't stop growing, but I eventually replied to them all 322 of them, continuing what I start as one of numerous positive habits I got from Mark. I simply want to hear him call me Carrot again. Carrot isn't my name. It's a Welsh word for love. July 27th, 2020, 3:10 a.m. Wow. I haven't been online for a few days, and suddenly there are hundreds of messages. I can't sleep again. And it occurred to me that I could update what happened to each of the people Mark had written about. It's just the facts. It won't have Mark humor or style, just plain information, but it's the best I can do and better than nothing. Site manager. He started as planned in the new position on a building project for a distribution center. Mark had already said what site manager and David were unhappy about being on a fixed 18-month contract. As a self-employed person was a disadvantage compared to being an employee. But that was before the coronavirus. After the virus hit, most of the employees were laid off. Some were furloughed. But because of the contract, the company had to keep paying the site manager in full. What he thought was a bad thing turned out to be a savior. Noisy gobshite. The last that David could tell me about Noisy Gobshite was that he has been forced to divest his share of the business. So he no longer owns a third. He had to sign a personal liability agreement regarding his assets in the event of total liabilities being greater than the value of the company. The way I understand it is that if, for example, the total bills for Noisy Gobshites mistakes are more than the company can pay, then Noisy Gobshite must pay the extra, even if that means he loses his house. He had to give up his share of the business because they couldn't keep trading. If he was involved, he needs them to keep going. To pay the lawyers he hasn't been charged with. Issues he has continued. Almost as usual, he said, work is easier. Because in his words, the usual plonkers are not there to trip on my equipment or stick plank ends into my finished work. Personally, David is not doing so well outside of family. David took Mark's death worse than anybody. He tries not to show it in front of me when he is with me. He is a rock. He has saved me from myself. He is one of 3 people where I feel I can really let go about Mark. Or so I thought. I spoke to David's wife last week, and she was so sweet and sympathetic about it, but she had to tell me to hold back a little with David. He looks strong to me, but his wife says it's shattering him. I knew he and Mark were good friends. She says he has taken Mark's death very badly. She says, in all their marriage, she only saw him cry once when their dog died. She didn't see him cry when his parents passed. She says he seems lost now and has cried quite a few times. The worst thing to hear is that the time he cries is after he has been to see me. I feel terrible. It's obvious that he was grieving, but I didn't know I was putting so much on him. I'm going to be more careful and stop using him to vent all my pain. I wish he had spoken sooner. Or maybe I should have been aware of it, instead of being so selfishly focused on my own grief. That's as much as I know about the updates. They are waiting to see what noise he is charged with. If he is convicted of damage to listed buildings, he may go to jail. If he is convicted of fraud, he'll almost likely go to prison either way. The fine will E6 numbers. David remarked he wondered whether he'd enjoy jail coffee. He's got nasty sense of humor. July 27th, 2020, 30 a.m. When I came online earlier, there were notifications for 512 private messages and comments. I don't know where to start. If you've written, please, 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 don't think I'm ungrateful because I haven't replied at 3:10 a.m. I felt able to write. So I did the update right now. I don't think I can do it. I've been looking at the video of our wedding. I thought it would make me feel better, but I feel like I've been knocked over by a bus. Mark's speech has crushed me. He talked about when we met and when he went back to the house he shared with other Royal Marines. One of them asked Mark, "What's the joke?" Then again, "You're grinning about something." Come on, what's so funny? Mark said he couldn't and wouldn't explain it to them. He just couldn't stop smiling every time he thought about our date. He said he felt like that. Every time he thought about me on our wedding day, it made me smile and brought a tear to my eyes. But this morning, it broke me. I don't think the pain is getting easier. I think it's getting worse. I can't stand it. I feel it all through me and I can't stop it all. I can think lately is that if I can't have him back, I wish I had been in the car with him. He was an atheist, and he always said, "This is all you get, so don't dare waste any of it," so he wouldn't approve of me hurting myself, so I don't think I can. It's just so hard to carry on with this pain. I just want it toof. The messages in chat, but the screen shows I still have 92. Waiting, if you didn't. Receive a response you're in. The 92. It was our anniversary. Yesterday, 30th August. I was dreading it, but then when it arrived, it was somewhat of empty. I watched our wedding video. I sobbed. I replied some texts midway through one message. I was suddenly overcome with the awareness that all the enjoyment I would ever experience in my life has already occurred, and finished everything I try to do in the future is just going to be overwritten with Mark. Should be here, but he isn't everything from here until I die, is just going to be existence. Just breathing and watching the days pass. It seems so pointless without Mark. I don't know if I can write anymore. Thank you to everyone who offered their help. You're lovely people. Hold on to the people you love, like you might lose them tomorrow. Don't do what I did and assume you can carry on in your own little heavenly bubble forever. Some careless idiot can snuff out everything you love in the blank of an eye, leaving you with nothing ahead of you. Bye.